Hello and welcome to today's video. My name's Haley and we are going over the 14th Siddhi of Bounteousness. Bounteousness. I feel like that word, to me at least, is such a mouthful, which ironically depicts its definition, right? To be full of bounty or bounteousness is to be so full, so abundant, flourishing, more than you actually even need, a mouthful. So yeah, I think it's kind of funny that I have a hard time saying that word because it's such a mouthful. And I'll just remind you all that the shadow frequency of compromise and the gift of competence within this 14th gene key radiating prosperity are both highly contagious, which also means this theme will bleed into the SIDDHI state. Bounteousness is highly contagious. Your abundance, once it's unlocked, keeps getting more unlocked and more unlocked and more unlocked. We can return to that visual of the turbine spinning, its fuel being the enthusiasm that brings along with it qualities of efficiency, enthusiasm, flair, and flexibility. And this momentum that builds is contagious. It keeps compounding unto itself. So he opens up this chapter with a word I was not familiar with. I'll just read it. He says, at this SIDDHI level of consciousness, energy is transmitted through an individual via the medium of the morphogenic field. Morphogenic field. I was not familiar with morphogenic. Luckily, he provides us the definition soon thereafter. He says, morphogenic fields are energetic grids that connect all creatures and particles in a matter at a subatomic level. In order for a human being to utilize the power of this energetic matrix, the body must emit a very high frequency wavelength. Okay, so he's talking about the quantum field, essentially. In order for a human being to utilize the power of this energetic matrix, which is in and of itself never ending, so to keep tapping into the never-ending energy of this matrix, the body must emit a very high frequency. Going back to the chart, I always reference the David R. Hawkins map of consciousness. Higher frequencies are equivalent to love, which is about 500 hertz. Above that is peace, around 600 hertz. Above that, it just keeps going up, right? But it's pretty simple, whether you want to reference that chart or not. It's easy to decipher whether a frequency is low or high. Just ask yourself, do you think sadness is a high or low frequency? It's sad. What about depression? It's pretty low frequency. Guilt, shame, all these things that feel quote unquote bad are lower, and all the things that feel quote unquote good, peace, joy, love, bliss, are higher frequencies. So getting into this high frequency state allows a person to utilize and tap into the power of the energetic matrix. And why would an individual want to tap into this matrix? Well, you could say it helps you manifest bounteousness or call in abundance. Unlock your true potential. And this makes sense, right? What you put out is what you receive back. If you're putting out these high frequencies of peace, joy, love, bliss, it would make sense then that you get back abundance, health, happiness, bounteousness in all forms, right? More than just monetary. Abundance in relationship, deep, meaningful connections. Abundance of energy and vitality within the body. And abundance in the way that you create, having many facets in which you express yourself, and doing so in a deep, well thought out, thorough way. He says something phenomenal or astounding. Something astounding occurs to the chemistry of the person at this Siddhic state of bounteousness. It drives the ego right out of the vehicle. Okay, and when he says this, it's not like, let's see. I feel like the word ego has such this like negative connotation. I think more specifically, he means to say it drives the negative parts of the ego out of the vehicle. Because a person does need some ego intact in order to be localized on this earth. The ego is just the separation from oneness. So there does need to be at least a subliminal pinch of separation so that you can stay localized in your body and not merge with all of consciousness. But it drives all of the negative aspects of the ego, right? The part of us that blames and sees separate selves and judges and condemns. It drives those lower negative frequencies right out of the temple, right out of the body. So then he takes us down a little rabbit hole, talking about eukaryotes, which are types or amoeba, which essentially is primitive single-celled organisms. Ironically enough, it's these very, very simple single-celled organisms that are a perfect example of this Siddhic state of consciousness. Essentially, it's just a nucleus containing genetic information and then some form of protective membrane, he says. So really all it is genetic information, DNA, and consciousness flowing through it. That's it. Just enough of that ego to localize it, and no parts of the harmful ego that are driven out, right? When one is operating in a Siddhic state. That means no attachments. This isn't my piece of clothing or my video, my tea. My name isn't anything. I don't own anything. I'm not attached to anything or any outcome. I don't have any opinion, no judgment. All in any form of ego that's not necessary just to be localized is completely gone. So like these Uricotes, an individual that has the Siddhic state of bounteousness, or really any Siddhic state, right, has only two things: their own genetic information, and then consciousness, God's essence, source energy, whatever you want to call it, flowing through the vessel. That's it. Which means that this person does not have a normal functioning of awareness, right? They don't navigate their day based on likes and dislikes. They don't have egoic desires. They don't wake up in the morning and say, I need coffee, or I need tea, or whatever your thing is when you wake up. They don't have a preference when someone asks them what they want to do. They are just being, right? If you were to ask a Uricote, what would you like to do? It doesn't even have the capacity to respond. It only has the capacity to receive its environment and give the environment what it just is. There is nothing. It sounds kind of boring, right? But it's not. I'm sure the individual who's embodied in this Siddhic state is stoked. Imagine that, right? Not needing to be attached to anything. Not needing a coffee when you wake up. Not needing to be stimulated on the Instagram, or needing to go on vacation, or needing a paycheck. They don't have any things they need because they already feel completely satiated, which is why they're able to be present fully in that moment. And in giving all of their presence, they're naturally receiving abundance 24/7. And It's interesting, he recognizes here that these instructions for us to be embodied in this Siddic state are already within us, already embedded within our DNA. And it's the shadow frequency, the lower frequency, that kind of messes with these instructions and interferes. He says it's background noise, compromise. And it comes from the past. As your genetic frequency moves toward the gift level of competence, the noise diminishes, right? The noise in your head saying you should compromise this and do this because everyone else is to, or because you're supposed to. This noise diminishes, and you begin to live less from your own past, from your mind, and more within each moment, like the year coat. You start to plan and assess your day based on right now. How do you feel right now? Imagine that, living more within each present moment. All of a sudden, you're not going to college just because, well, that's what everyone else does. You're actually asking yourself, what do I want to do right now? Not based on past conditioning. And this is interesting, right? This can even be applied to the simple example of, well, every morning I wake up and the first thing I do is make coffee. You know, it's funny, actually, this morning, this is so funny. I didn't even realize this until right now. This morning, usually every morning I wake up, first thing I do is make coffee. But this morning, my boyfriend asked me, do you want coffee or tea? And usually he never asks, he'll just make me coffee because he's lovely. But he asked, and I said, you know, actually, I want tea because I have a little, not a cough, but I'm getting a little sick. And I thought, you know, tea with honey sounds nice. And so in that moment, you could say, I stepped into presence and I said, what do I actually want right now? And if I was operating in a more unconscious way, I might just say coffee because that's what I always say. So that's a very, very simple example of how to act from the present moment. Maybe another simple example could be, every time you go to your favorite restaurant, you get the same thing. Well, what if next time you go, you really ask yourself, do I actually even want this thing? Or do I want to look at the rest of the menu? Very simple. And maybe the answer still is, oh no, I still want my favorite pizza with the pineapple, the one I always get. Or maybe the answer is something different, new, novel, and evolutionary. So the person at the Siddic level is always operating from this mode of consciousness, from this presence. And I kind of envision someone who's balancing on a tightrope. It takes extreme awareness, energy, and presence to stay on the tightrope and not fall into, oh, I want coffee because I always have coffee, or I'm going to do this because everyone else is doing it. You have to stay locked in every single moment. You have to be completely dedicated to the moment. And this is what bhakti is, right? Which they talk about in some branches of yoga. Bhakti is devotion, and more specifically, devotion to presence, devotion to the moment, devotion to love, devotion to God, all the same thing. But back to the gene keys. He says, you only need to understand the importance of this last statement. And he's referencing this statement right here. At the true Siddic level, all trace of personal and genetic history has to be burned from your body. This is no small matter. You need to understand the importance of this statement. All personal history has to be deleted from the body. All of your past memories, all of your past preferences, attachments, sufferings, traumas, not only from your own individual past, but also from the genetic history. Yeah, we're talking your great-great-grandma's past that's stored in your genes because you're related. We're talking about your ancestors that were in whatever war. All history is stored in the genes, and all of it has to be burned once again in this, I think he calls it the fire in the belly is competence. So think of that fire again, that transmutation, something that burns so that it can be reborn, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. This is no small matter, all of this stuff being burned up. And there's quite a few names for this that you could scour the internet for later if you're interested. I've mentioned the words dark night of the soul before. That's what this is. Ego death is more in reference to psychology, same thing. This is all of the genetic history being burned. And this might happen in successions, right? It's not like you just have one ego death or one dark night of the soul or one kundalini purge. Sometimes it comes in waves. So yeah, this is no small matter. And for you who's watching, if you've ever had any sort of ego death, any part of your trauma coming up to be felt and liberated, then you know just how fiery it really is. And I don't know why I find myself referencing Hindu gods right now, but it also makes me think of Kali, the goddess who has all the knives on her belt and like that crazy tongue sticking out. And she goes in there and slashes heads off. And she's doing it for the purpose of this, right? Burning the personal and genetic history so that things can be reborn. So that's another thing you could look up if you're interested. Goddess of Kali, Kundalini awakening, Kundalini purging, dark night of the soul, ego death. All these different things are basically trying to describe the same thing, which we can all point at it, but you'll never really understand it until you actually experience it, right? That's how you embody this wisdom into your own being. So be careful what you wish for, but that's what he's talking about. And he emphasizes here, he says, that means every single feeling, every single fear, every single aspiration and desire dating back to the beginning of man's journey is what has to be purged. Bounteousness is the ultimate legacy of what it means to be human. It's our true genetic inheritance of man to create abundance. And this is interesting, right? Because actually, if you look out in our society, you'll see that we have strayed quite far from the truth. Many, many people are not bounteous, and many, many people don't think they have the capacity to become abundant or that they even deserve it. When really, in truth, I know it's so cheesy, but it's also so true, you have to admit. And he says it right here, it's our genetic inheritance. Man is meant to be abundant and create that abundance. And it's only because we've been knocked out of alignment with reality that we operate within shadow frequencies of compromise and therefore don't inherit what is ours from birthright, because we of our own free will choose to stay unconscious in the shadow frequency of compromise, for example. So inviting in the new choice of competence is the way to elevate and experience your own inheritance. And I'm not saying any of this is easy, right? I'm just telling you how it is. It's not easy to transcend all your fears, face all your fears, but it is necessary if you would like to come into attunement with who you really are and what you are really meant to experience and inherit in this lifetime. The person that embodies this 14th Siddhic state flowers. When the 14th Siddhi flowers inside of a person, they become the driving force of humanity. Their every word, deed, and thought reaches deep into this morphogenic field, this energetic matrix, and they start to push all of humanity into the direction of abundance. So one person, just one person in this SIDDHIC state actually generates more abundance, not only for themselves, but also anyone and everyone around them. They influence the entire direction of a species. That's a mic drop. It's very contagious. He also reminds us the shadow frequency of compromise is contagious. Yep, we got it, Richard Rudd. Compromise is very contagious. Competence is very contagious. Remember, competence is built up of 4 things, which is efficiency, enthusiasm, flair, and flexibility. All of these make up competence. Competence is extremely contagious. And he reminds us here that bounteousness is extremely contagious. One person who has this naturally spreads it to everyone else like a virus, like the best virus ever, the abundance virus. So as people start to awaken through the city, it's going to travel like wildfire. Just how currently we experience and see compromise traveling like wildfire. It's going to transmute and elevate after it burns in that fire to abundance. Creating ripples of prosperity and spiritual well-being. The 14th city is about the end of all things personal. Coming into the same state of being as a year coat, having simply that genetic instruction and consciousness flow through. The end of all things personal. And individual power is nothing more than a myth. One of my favorite ways to remember this is this little phrase I heard once, which is, I'm being lived. And when I say that, when I don't just say it unconsciously, right? When I really say that and really think about what it means, I'm being lived, I envision, this is so like, whatever, hippie woo-woo, but it's what I do, okay? I envision like light flowing through all of my spine and like God consciousness or source energy flowing through and moving, and it being the energy that moves me to pick up the tea and drink it. I'm being lived. Individual power is nothing more than a myth. So, oh my gosh, I haven't offered you any contemplations. First, and maybe perhaps the only contemplation of this video, is think about this sentence, individual power is nothing more than a myth. Marinate on that, and then create an anchor that you can return to remind you that individual power is a myth. So I just offered you an example, and you can very much adopt mine if that resonates with you. To remind myself that this separation, that I am doing things of my own, to remind myself of that, I envision the light pouring through my head and me being lived. It's the energy that flows through me, that helps me pick up the tea, that helps me talk, that helps me channel, that helps me create. So yeah, maybe you could even journal about it. Individual power is nothing more than a myth. What does that mean to you, and what anchor will you use to remind you of the truth? Last thoughts here. He gives us a great example of how this is true. Individual power is nothing more than a myth. He says, individuality is the same thing as an interference. He gives us an example. If a cell within the body behaves as though it has an identity of its own, it cannot function cleanly. Imagine if one of your cells was like, oh, no, no, no. I'm not working with you, cell next to me or cell next to me. No, I'm actually my own thing. It's like, no, you're not, dude. You're a part of this huge body, and we need you to work with us in order to keep Haley operating. And that can be translated to the worldview, right? When an individual acts like they're not connected, it actually affects the entire body. It's an illness, and it thinks it exists autonomously. So yes, part of coming into this SIDDHI state of bounteousness is coming into the gnosis and remembrance that you are simply one cell in a larger, greater body. Your cooperation is not only desired, but necessary for the health of yourself and for the whole. And that creates more abundance for you and for everyone else, because it's contagious. That's the whole 14th gene key. I really liked that one. It spoke to me a lot. Stay tuned for the 15th gene key, an eternal flowering spring. Hey guys, thanks again for tuning in with me for this Gene Keys episode. I also just wanted to come on here and start promoting my one-to-one coaching that I offer to women and girls ages 16 to 35. If you followed me on Instagram for a while, you might be a little bit familiar with my story. I was a model in New York City for 5 years, and in that time frame, I did quite some damage. I developed a really severe eating disorder, body dysmorphia, chronic anxiety. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even go out to dinner without thinking about how much calories, how much I'd have to overwork out in order to compensate for what I was eating. All of those issues led to quite a depression and turned into PCOS, and I also lost my menstrual cycle for over 5 years. All of this amalgamation of issues led me to soon realize that something needed to change. I went through much work. Many people helped me to get to where I am now, and I'm so thrilled to say I'm living such a more abundant life, and I don't feel zapped and drained and fear of judgment anymore like I used to. I would love to offer what I've learned through my own embodied experience, the meditative techniques that have gravitated toward me, and the own verified games that I've made up and curated to help you walk home to more of you and who you really are, so that all of these things can stop draining your energy. You know, all the constant comparison to others and to your people on Instagram, all the over-analysis about working out and what you're eating or what you look like. All of these things are not what life's about, as cheesy as it sounds. And I would love to help you come into more unity with you if you struggle with any of these things and you're a woman or girl between the ages of 16 and 35. So feel free to reach out to me if one-on-one coaching sounds resonant. You can feel free to DM me through Instagram or contact me via email, both of which will be left below in the description box. So much love and aloha to you guys, and I'll see you all in the next video.